This is the last video I'm doing for government class, and I think it's really important because you're going to have to take a test on the Constitution of the United States. And so this in your book is a good place to go, and has the study notes of what the Constitution is about. So I'm just going to go over these, and then you go ahead and take your constitutional test and what the Constitution is about, and what the Constitution and the amendments mean to us. So it says, okay, with study notes, this is the Constitution of the United States. I'm not going to read all of the Constitution, but I'm going to read the study notes so you can follow along. First of all, it says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So that's the preamble. So it says, who wrote the Constitution? The representatives of we the people. The American people have a grave responsibility to elect leaders wisely and vote for laws that will bring about the well-being of our entire country, not just special interest groups. So who was involved in, of course we know, in the writing of the Constitution, we had some great men and founders, but it says we the people. So why was the Constitution written? To secure what? Union, justice, tranquility, which is law and order, defense, well-being, and liberty. That's all in the preamble of the Constitution. So Article 1 is about the legislative branch. I'm not going to read this all, but I'm going to read what it says in the notes. But basically, Section 1, it says all legislative powers, that's lawmaking powers, herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States, which shall consist of what? A Senate and a House of Representatives. 2. So the power to make laws. Congress has the legislative powers, the power to make laws. Only Congress can make national laws. Congress consists of 2 houses. There's the Senate, which has 100 in the Senate. Basically the Senate is 2 senators from each state, and the House of Representatives that goes by population. So here in Section 2, it says the House. We're going to talk about the House of Representatives. So how representatives are elected, it tells here. So basically it says congressmen, members of the House of Representatives, are elected every 2 years. So House of Congressman, not a senator, but a congressman, is elected every 2 years. And people are allowed to vote for their representatives. That means they're voted in. And they're also allowed to vote for national representatives too. So to vote for the state, it says here, and for the national level, we are to vote for our representatives. That's why they're called representatives, right? And the requirements for a representative are what? They have to be at least 25 years old for a representative. They have to be 7 years a United States citizen. For 7 years, they have to be a citizen. They just come from another country and become a citizen. They have to be a citizen for 7 years. 25 years old, 7 years a citizen, and they need to be a resident of the state. If they're representing the state, they need to live in that state, right? Okay, let's go on. So, and you can read this over here. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. So, basically saying appointment. The number of representatives allowed a state is dependent upon the state's population. So, if a state has more of population, more people in that state, it will have more representatives and more districts. So, and it says see Amendment 14 and 16 for changes. These both, one is civil rights changes and one for income tax changes, but this apportionment, they call it apportionment. Apportionment is basically in each state area, populated areas, it's to apportion that number of votes depending on how many people live there. So the more districts have more representatives because they have more population. That's called Apportionment, just think of apportionment, population. Apportionment, population, not hard. Census taking. A census basically is going to be taken, and it's every 10 years we have a census there. They find out how many people are living in the United States and which areas they're living, right? The census in each state is taken every 10 years, and it's for the purpose of determining apportionment. Basically, districts change, and so some of them will have less population and they'll go down less representatives, and some will have more. So each state is entitled, though, to at least one representative. So if a state seems like they don't have very much population, they're going to at least have one representative, right? No state may have more than one representative for every 30,000 people. So that's important now. So no state may have more. So when they get to the point where you have millions of people there, no state, that would be like tons of congressmen, right? So no state may have any more than one representative for every 30,000 people. So today, each House seat represents about 600,000 people. So, 600,000 people. So if it would just get, our Congress would get humongous, huge. So there's a top limit. So no state may have any more represented for every 30,000 people. Filling the vacancies in the House. So if a representative dies or resigns, the state's governor for an election fills the vacancy. So in the House of Representatives, say that they die, you elected someone to the House and they die, then the governor of that state can fill in and say who they want until the next election, right? Next 2 years. So House officers, impeachment. Impeachment is a way to get rid of someone that's doing a horrific job and is not moral or is doing illegal things, right? That's called impeachment. The House chooses its own officers, which include the Speaker of the House, majority and minority leaders, the chaplain, and the sergeant at arms. Only the House has the right to impeach, formally accuse of wrongdoing, an officer of the United States. So the House of Representatives, they can impeach a president. They can accuse the president. But the Senate is going to put them on trial. So the Senate and the House work together on impeachment. So let's talk about the Senate now. In Section 3, we have a whole thing in the Constitution about the Senate. Of course, we have 2 senators from each state. They're elected for 6 years. So more than a president. They're elected for 6 years. Amendment 17 talks about the election of senators because we have to vote from before a certain period of time, which, before, I can't think of the year now, but the senators were appointed by the state, but now we vote for them. So, and that's what the 17th Amendment does, is so that we can vote for our senators and not just have the states appoint them. So they're elected for 6 years, and each senator has 1 vote in the Senate. The election of senators filling vacancy. So 1/3 of the members elected every 2 years. So you don't every 6 years vote for all of the senators at once. So 1/3 of the members are elected every 2 years, and the next 2 years, the other third, and the next 2 years, the next third. That's how we do the election of senators. So they all don't just leave at once and get new ones, right? Senators are now chosen at large, and special elections are held to fill Senate vacancies, okay? And that's, again, Amendment 17 talks about how we should vote for senators. Requirements for a senator. So a senator must be at least 30 years old. He also should live in the country, be a citizen of he also should be a resident of the state he represents. So he represents the state, he needs to live there. And then he needs to be in the United States as a citizen for 9 years. So it's a little bit higher than we had for the House of Representatives, isn't it? So 9 years. So you can go back and look at the House. Should I do that? See what the difference is so you know the difference here. 25 years old for a representative, 30 years for a senator. 7 years for a United States citizen, and 9 years for a senator, a little bit higher. So 30 years old and 9 years for a senator. So the President of the Senate. The Vice President of the United States will serve as the chairman of the Senate in the same way as the Speaker of the House, So in the House, you have the Speaker of the House. This basically that person, the head of the House of Representatives, right? And then the Vice President is going to be of the Senate. But the Vice President has no vote except to break a tie in the Senate, while the Speaker of the House can vote. So the Speaker of the House actually is more prestigious even than the Vice President many times. So when you think of Speaker of the House, they have a very prestigious and high job because they do a lot of things and represent. They a lot in the House of Representatives. But anyway, the Senate, the Vice President's the head of the Senate. Other officers of the Senate chooses them, the officers, and they include a sergeant at arms, a chaplain, a president pro temp. What does that mean? A temporary vice president or a temporary position. So a president pro temp, if the president for a time being, as the vice president is absent to be the head of the Senate, then the president pro temp does if the vice president cannot be there. So just think of temporary, a temporary position, temporary president of the Senate is the president pro temp. On to impeachments. What is impeachment? It's the formal accusation of an official of wrongdoing. Only 2 presidents have ever been impeached, and it's actually 3 now, and they were judged innocent. All have been judged innocent. The House of Representatives issues impeachment charges. So the House of Representatives, they charge them, right? And the Senate conducts the trial. House of Representatives charges for impeachment, then the Senate puts forth a trial with a jury, a trial, If the President of the United States is on trial, the Chief Justice, not the Vice President, presides. So if the President of the United States is on trial, the Vice President isn't going to be head of the Senate. Instead, it's going to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is head. The Supreme Court, not the Vice President. It would be like if the President was being in charge of impeachment, then the Vice President was supposed to be the head justice. Would not work, would it? So a 2/3 vote of those present is required for impeachment. So 2/3 vote is required to impeach in the Senate. They have to have 2/3. No president has gone through this yet. An impeached person who is declared guilty can be punished by the Senate only by removal from office and being barred from future offices. He can later be tried in the court and punished like anyone else. So being impeached is not going to put him in jail, but it's going to take him out of position, is what that says in our Constitution. Elections to Congress. So state legislatures may pass laws prescribing when, where, and how senators and representatives are chosen, but Congress may change those laws. So Congress has exercised the right to change state election laws on many occasions. So elections to Congress, they're the lawmakers, can change those laws. So meetings of Congress. Congress must meet at least once a year. The opening day now has changed to January 3rd, noon, by the Amendment 20. Remember they had it's called the lame duck amendment. Amendment 20 said it was like in March. And so from November to March, you'd have a lame duck president or lame duck Congress, that was going to leave Congress. So now opening day, of course, now is January 3rd at noon, where Congress basically opened to meet. Rules of Congress. Congress judges its own members. Either the House may refuse to seat a newly elected member, and disputed elections may be settled in the House or the Senate. So they have to have a quorum. A minimum number are required to be present in order to conduct business. Half the members plus 1. So quorum. At least half of the senators, at least half of the Congress needs to be there for them to do business. So otherwise they don't have a quorum, and then they just have to decide to not meet, to disembark, so. In practice, routine work may be carried out without a majority if no member demands a count. So, if a majority are not present, the House or Senate may adjourn until the next day. If they don't have a majority, they say, well, we're going to adjourn the next day, and they'll penalize those that are not present. So if they're not present, why didn't you come? You're not present. We can penalize you, can fine you because you didn't come, but now we have to wait until the next day to meet. So each house determines its rules and punishes misbehaving members. They may expel members by a 2/3 vote, similar to the impeachment. So each house says if they see someone, a member that's misbehaving, they can actually vote, 2/3 of them vote, and say that they're going to get rid of them, similar to impeachment, but they basically are determining rules for that. Each house must keep and publish a journal of its meeting. It's called the Congressional Journal, and it's issued daily during the sessions of Congress to know what the Congress is doing. Neither house may adjourn for more than 3 days without the permission of the other house. So basically, if the Congress basically says they're going to adjourn for more than 3 days, then Senate has to adjourn too, so they have to agree, so they both adjourn. One can't adjourn and the other still go to Congress. It's not allowed. Neither house may move to another city unless another house agrees. Say the House of Representatives says, oh, we're gonna go to Philadelphia, and the Senate says, we're not gonna go to Philadelphia. They have to agree where they're gonna meet. So Section 6 is the privileges and restrictions. So the pay, the privileges, and the rules of Congress are paid out by the United States Treasury, of course, and they're immune to the arrest. So while they're in session, they can't be arrested, So come in, we're going to come in and arrest you right now. Maybe a false arrest even. They may not be arrested or punished for things they say in Congress except by their House. So they can't be punished. The law enforcement can't come in and punish them for what they said. Treason is defined in Article 3, Section 3. Treason is basically that against the government, something you're doing against the government, a radical thing, revolution, causing a revolution against the government. A felony is a serious crime. A breach of peace is an offense in which a person can be indicted for a breach of peace. And they can be indicted punished by their own Congress, their own House or Senate. You may not take federal jobs that were set up during their term or for which their pay was increased for their term. So they can't just go in and take the job and then raise their own pay, So they may not become a member of Congress without first giving up any other local federal job. So they can't say, well, I'm going to be a senator and I'm going to be a governor too. They have to just be a senator, not 2 jobs. So how a bill is passed. Only the House may introduce a bill to raise money. The House of Representatives has the job for taxes and money, not the Senate. So only those bills that have to do with money go to the House of Representatives, not the Senate. The Senate can make changes or propose amendments to the money bills, but they can't introduce the bills. So every bill that has passed the Senate and House must be presented to the President before it comes to law. So the bill goes, through the Senate, through the House, through the Senate, and sends it to the President, and the President can sign it, and the bill becomes a law, or he can send it back, veto it, say no, and he can send it back to the original houses. And the Senate and the House then reconsider the bill. And if each house overrides, they can actually override the president's veto by a 2/3 majority and say 2/3 majority of the bill, and the bill becomes a law. So they can override the president of the United States if the president vetoes it and sends it back. If the president ignores the bill for 10 days, and then it's presented, and then 10 days, excluding Sundays, 10 days, and then the Congress is not in session anymore, then it's called a pocket veto. It's just put in his pocket and nobody talks about it. Well, not that nobody talks about it. Pocket veto is that he's actually not wanted the bill, so he just let it go for 10 days, and then Congress is not there to do anything about it, so it's just put aside and forgotten. That's called a pocket veto of the president. Joint resolutions of Congress must pass the president's approval in the same manner as bills. Okay, that's just another thing. Powers of Congress. So the duties of Congress. So Congress basically collect taxes and duties to pay the debts and pay the military and to help people. All federal taxes and duties must be uniform throughout the land. So the powers of Congress to collect taxes and duties. To borrow money, Congress can borrow money. Congress can regulate international trade and interstate trade. So borrow money, regulate trade, collect taxes. They can establish naturalization requirements. Citizen, how to become a citizen. Congress can establish that. They can establish uniform laws regarding bankruptcy. So they can talk about bankruptcy. They can control the minting of money. They can actually make more money, mint more money, mint more money is basically making or putting more money into circulation. And the value of the money. The Congress can regulate the value of foreign money, and they can set up uniform standards for weights and measures and decide the punishments for counterfeiters if somebody counterfeits money. They can regulate the postal system. They can grant patents and copyrights to promote free enterprise among authors and inventors. They can set up federal courts below the Supreme Court. They can decide what constitutes crimes at sea and what punishment to meet for those crimes. The Congress is the Congress can really declare war. The president can put forth a declaration of war, but the Congress has the power to declare war. So know that. Who has the power to declare war? Congress is the only one that has the power to declare war. Congress can raise and support an army and a navy and make rules to govern the armed forces. So Congress can provide for the calling out of the National Guard to help put down riots or help in emergencies and help in national defense. All these things. National Guards, put down riots, provide for organizing an army and training the National Guard. The states appoint the officers. So basically, the states appoint the officers of the National Guard, but Congress puts together and organizes and arms the National Guard. Congress can make laws concerning the District of Columbia, can make laws concerning the property belonging to the national government. A really important clause in the Constitution is this.